In part two, I want to talk to you about actually writing the chapter that is assigned to you this session of the Equity Resource Manual. And so, as I talked about in the previous recording, you're going to be working on chapter two in this session. And that's because chapter one, which will be your introduction, will be written in the very last session when you already will know what you have covered in all of your chapters. So in chapter two, here's actually the prompt that you can work with. How do culture and identity shape the way in which children and young people learn? In this section, you will examine the ways in which culture and identity shape learning experiences and the ways in which discrimination can be subtle influences in educational settings. You'll provide strategies for avoiding discriminatory practices. All right, so that's the prompt that you have to work with. Now, hopefully your readings from Nieto and from Delpit and all the various things that I've posted for you will help you to think about how you want to, what you want to say in this chapter. All right, every chapter of the Equity Resource Manual is constructed in the same way, and it's somewhat formulaic, and once you get the hang of it, then hopefully it will be easy for you to follow. So first of all, you're going to have an introductory paragraph, and in this paragraph, you'll introduce the topic of the chapter and you'll state a thesis. The thesis is just one sentence, and in that sentence, you will identify the principle that you're covering in this chapter and the strategy for achieving the principle or philosophy that you are espousing in the chapter. Okay, so that's one section. The second section is the principle section, and in this section, you're going to be talking about the principle that you're covering in this chapter. So in this section, you're going to do these things: define terms, explain existing problems, provide context, suggest a guiding philosophy for this particular, for culture and identity, having to do with the setting that you've chosen and what you're choosing to focus on. The principle doesn't try to oversimplify things. Sort of talks about the fact that these issues are multifaceted, that they're complicated, and it also will sort of illuminate the intellectual perspective that you're wanting educators to think about with regard to this topic. The third part of the chapter will be the strategy section, where you will be suggesting strategies that will hopefully, solve the inequity that is evident with regard to this particular topic. And then finally, at the end, you will have a section of resources that you will list in APA. It's a little bit like looks a little bit like a references section, but it doesn't contain necessarily references that you've used for that chapter. It can, but really what this is a place where your reader can look and find resources that will help them with this particular topic. All right, I want you to identify 5 resources, and for each of those resources, you will provide a 100-word description of why that source would be good for your audience to look at. You can use anything in your resources section that I've provided for you as part of the class. You can use our books. You can use things that you find online that seem pertinent, books you've used in other classes, films, all sorts of things that you think would be helpful for your reader. The one thing is, though, that you can't repeat resources in different chapters. Now, let me qualify that a little bit. As this says, you could list a different part of a website in different chapters. You could use different chapters of a book in different chapters of your equity resource manual. So, for instance, uh, we're reading the two Nieto books, and maybe there's a particular chapter that you think it is just very important for your reader to be familiar with. Um, and so you would list that chapter in, say, this particular section. But then for another chapter of your equity resource manual, you could use a different chapter of that book. Okay, I hope all of that is clear. I'm also going to make you a little recording that talks you through the sample chapter that I have posted. And hopefully between all of these things, it will help you to understand what I'm looking for.